I want to be like those guys. Those guys had something inside them that was light and kept me alive. I was able to go on for one more day because of what that one dude said.
Anchors and Eagles brings listeners into the studio with host Adam Facenda, a tattoo artist turned story chaser. And now, on to the show.
I want to welcome Vinny, or Vincent, or as I used to call him, Vinny the Butcher, and we'll talk about that. Some people know him from all walks of life, a carpenter, a jiu-jitsu master, or just a really good friend. I want to welcome you to the podcast, Vinny.
Thank you, brother. Back at you, man.
What do you want me to call you, Vincent or Vinny, or what do you want me to call you?
You know, it's at your discretion. We're homies for a long time, and all my friends from different angles come at me with a different version of my name, and it's all endearing to me.
Okay, good. Yeah, it's like when I was a kid and I wanted to be a junior. My father was Frank, so I always wanted to be called Frank, and didn't get that opportunity because someone named my brother Frank as well. But when I first started working in the real world, I made everyone call me Frank. I think at the age of 14 when I was working at Little Caesars. So I have friends that still call me Frank to this day, and I will still respond to it. So how did we meet? Yes.
48. Oh, just moved down to South Florida with my ex-wife and my oldest son, who's now a Coast Guardsman, grown man, married, etc. That's how much time has passed.
Wow.
You remember my son, I know, as a
Yeah, I remember him in a stroller. Yeah.
dude.
Mm-hmm.
Coming off of a broken ankle. I broke my ankle on a spine ramp up in Jacksonville, Florida, a place called Skate World. A lot of really good skateboarders used to hang out there in Kona. So I was just coming off that injury, moved to South Florida to take over a managerial position as a butcher. There goes the butcher part.
The butcher.
I found the skate park, Ram 48, and I couldn't skateboard, but for like 30 minutes a time. And a kid who was working there at the time, who's now a grown man with kids of his own. Do you remember Brian?
No.
All right. So Brian, amazing skateboarder. The dude, like, he made any pro that came to Ramp 48 look like semi-pro. Yeah, he'd be like, you can skate for like 30 minutes. That's fine. He's like, but we charge for the hour. I'm like, I can't skateboard an hour. I'm like, I'll pay you for the hour, but I can't skate an hour. But he actually would hook me up, man. He did me right. And during that time that we were skateboarding there, what is Blair's company? Kept in touch with him?
Yeah, Blair Hess. Like, let's say his full name because he is worthy of a full name. Blair Hess. What is his project called?
Got so many of them. I don't know which
I
one is
know.
now. But basically all the OG skateboarders in down south, it's a small circle back then. Blair was there. You were there. There was, goodness gracious, man, I won't remember this kid's name, but that tight circle of friends that were into music and skateboarding.
Yeah.
So I met you in that parking lot. You had some pimp ride back then. I can't remember what it was. It was a big old boat. It was so awesome.
I believe it was my 67 Pontiac Le Mans.
Yes, that sounds about right. And that's where it began right there. It's like, what's up?
Yeah.
Hey, what's up, dude?
Yeah. So I know we always talk about this, but my fondest memory of those times, and speaking of skateboards, was at Flow when I used to do the underground music there.
Yeah.
And that day that I had that little altercation with the young man that decided he was going to blow past me and go upstairs and see the show anyway. And I said to you, you said, "Hey, do you need any help?" And at the time, you were probably what, $160 at that time. Like you were
55 tops.
155 tops, and I laughed at you because I was like, nah, I got it, because I knew at that time I think I was like 180, 190, and I've been a street scrapper my whole life, and I laughed at you. And then later on in life I found out through Asher that you're actually a fucking ninja, his words. So thanks for not like schooling me at that moment, by the way. You've always been someone that's super humble and such a gracious person to me, man. And I'm so grateful that I've met you in my life. And we talk about this all the time, like we met then, but we kept re-meeting or seeing each other throughout life. And I'm so grateful because God always put you in my path when I needed something or someone to help me out. And for some reason, you would always just pop up and be there. So I'm so grateful for that, you know. And I know back then I didn't talk much about God. You know, I was very much an agnostic back then. And but you always, you know, you always brought up God's name and always talked about that and stuff like that. I mean, you were there for the first shop. Yeah, I think you. I don't even know if we did anything with the first shop, but you were like, we met up in the parking lot. You just had been like driving through the parking lot or something, and we ended up like catching up there. And then when I did the bar, you know, you were there for that, and then those were good times too. You know what I mean? We got to revisit the music again, which is cool. Um, and you were there. You actually helped build that stage where many bands had their very first performance there, and you got to bartend there as well for me for a while, which I was very grateful for that as well.
Hard to me, dude.
Yeah,
I got to interject that. So those moments where I was in need, you would pop up. And so, like, when you reached out to me, you're like, I just need somebody to be at the bar. We've got a girl who's there already. And that was, I know her name. I don't want to mention that name, Zena. So
Zena. Yeah.
Zia was there. You're just like, I just feel better if there was a man there with her. And then
Yes.
that very night that I worked with her, I see why you wanted somebody there because she was getting hit on left and right. And felt a little uncomfortable, but it was a blessing to me because I was in financial distress, and that for me for a week for like food, groceries, and all kinds of things. So it was a two-way street, my brother.
Yeah. I mean, it's one hand washes the other, you know, both wash the face, right? So I was so grateful at that time. I'm like a huge, you know, she's like my sister too. For a while, we used to tell everybody that we were brother and sister. Then people would ask, like, why do you go to her burlesque shows? And I'm like, well, she's not really my sister, like, you know, sister, like you are my brother, you know?
Um,
And yeah, I was very grateful for that. She can hold her own, but I always feel like there should be a man around a woman in that kind of atmosphere, even at the shop. Like I don't like. I mean, I have a lot of females that work at the shop now, and I don't like it when they're just solely females. Not that they can't hold their own, but there's some crazy people out there, and you know, we'll touch on this too. You know, I hate the stigma of alphas, right? So everyone is like down on men and men being like masculine, and that's so poor, and it's like so, you know, toxic and stuff like that. And there are some toxic males out there for sure that are identifying as alphas, but in my heart, a true alpha doesn't have to do disgusting things to be an alpha. You know, we just show up and we do what's right and by everybody and protect people, you know?
it-
Yeah. And you, of course, have now you're a teacher, right? You've talked about that for just a second. You've touched a lot of people's lives and you help teach them how to protect themselves. What's that like for you?
is the greatest occupation I could ever conjure for myself. Um, Obviously, you remember me from when I worked with like big corporations and big box stores, and I always move up into managerial roles, and I would always try to protect my employees to the best I could, but just from whatever, sometimes from the corporation abusing them. So it was in my nature to want to protect. This and open up a whole Pandora's box of emotions. Um, Being used by like people to make them money while you gave them your soul and your loyalty, that sucks. And I never wanted anybody to go through what I went through, you know, even to the terms of or to the point of breaking my own body so that somebody else could profit. So I just had that protective nature. I experienced firsthand what it is to be screwed over and to be taken advantage of. So the evolution of the soul, you either become one of them or you become their arch enemy. So proudly through Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, I was able to become kind of an arch enemy to that thinking where you prey on people for your benefit. Afforded me the opportunity to take normal people and maybe not even physically active or talented people, but give them a fighting chance. And not just on the physical side, but even as a too much on the physical side, I'm able to mentor people based on my life's experiences. They're more readily to receive it than say if I were to run down the street as an evangelist and try to tell somebody the truth. Here on the mats, people want knowledge, they want wisdom. You're showing them that you are not just a normal person, they're more ready to receive. So, dude, this is the blessing, man. I'm gonna die doing this.
That's so good. Now, I don't know if you I want to touch on this, but we've talked about it a couple of times. When you were younger, you had a different life. You, I never asked you this. Is jujitsu what brought you out of that dark life, or were you into jujitsu back then as well?
So no, I was not into jujitsu. Humans attracted to power. So all relationships. And a man sees a woman, there is a power about that woman that attracts him to her. It is a tool power, but it's a power nonetheless. In our circle of friends, etc., like burlesque, etc., those women show they have a strong allure and a strong power, and that's what attracts people to them. So men, on the other hand, we're attracted to all kinds of power as long as it's power. And I just took some really bad role models, and those people had not they had been men of God and good advice. Like you were well on your path to becoming a man of God because you would protect people who couldn't protect themselves. Would have had somebody like you knew God and would have said, "Hey, heart's in the right place, your head is not. Let's do something productive with this in time, with all this physical energy, with all this fear that you have." Would have walked a different path entirely. I probably, hopefully would have found something like jujitsu or something productive. Other hand, in God's wisdom, I probably would have ended up joining the military, and that could have been a debacle because I've spent the last 2 decades counseling guys who have too much blood on their hands to live for another day and that they can be forgiven. So there's a lot inside that shell, sir.
Yeah. So, what brought you to jujitsu then?
Actually, my ex-wife.
Really?
This is a funny story. So my ex-wife was from New York. She's a New Yorican. And if you know the stereotypes of like the Hispanic New Yorker woman, they, they talk really big. One day during just joking around with her, she imploded. So I was like, "Ooh, this is not good. Like you're talking big, but you're in Florida now. You can't talk like that and then not be able to back it up because it is going to start a fight." I go, "So I had to get you some lessons real quick." At that place in time, I already had exposure to Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. And over in Boca Raton, Helson Gracie, Rodrigo's dad, Helson Gracie, there's a bunch of them, happened to have a studio there down the street from Black Belt Academy. And that is the Silvera brothers, who are Carlson Gracie team. If you're in the jiu-jitsu community, this is like super significant. It's kind of nervous to take her over there because those guys at the Carlson Gracie team, those dudes were about that life, man. They were fighting hard. Their ears were like crumbled. And
Yeah.
yeah, I was like, I'm not going to take my wife there. But then I saw the Gracie Academy. That was in Boca Raton at that time. And it was individual classes with an instructor. So I felt safe to take her there. It was like, I think 50 or $60 a class back then, a class. Like you can join a jujitsu studio now for like $200 a month, give or take. Back then it was expensive per class. And I wanted to teach her how to defend herself because if she's going to talk, she needs to be able to back it up. But also, she went to work for Frito Lay at that time, and they run routes early in the morning. Now, do you remember Old Atlantic Avenue?
Yeah.
That was one of her stops.
Wow. Rough.
I was like, you have to know how to protect yourself. As I'm watching her learn, saw how to oompa, an up and roll technique. I had never seen anything like that in my life. It kind of looked fake. So I asked the instructor, I'm like, does that really work? Like, that's a woman. Like, you could just hold her down. He's like, it really works, bro. Like, can I try that? So I played both variations of the technique. I tried it from on top, and then I tried it as a person that was pinned. First is the person that was pinned, and I rolled the guy right over. I'm like, that is awesome, but I think you let me do that. You just want another student.
Right.
I did it from the top position, and he just tossed me right over like it was nothing. And I was like, okay, this is real. I have always been looking for real. I am attracted to real. Sign me up.
That was it, huh?
5 years ago, I tried it out.
It's crazy. What's crazy is you said you came from Jacksonville, and that's where Asher was from, and he learned from the Gracies as well. So that's pretty crazy that you guys same place. That's how like I identify with you about Asher a lot, and I hate to bring him up so much, but I just miss him so much. So
The real one.
yeah. Yeah, he's a real one for sure. For sure. That's awesome. So I'm on this journey, right? And you saw a bunch of the videos. I want to really help out a lot of other men. You said that you help some guys going through some PTSD. Let's just call it what it is. Do you see a great change in them whenever you're working with them, just through jujitsu or just mentoring them?
So it's very complex. The mind of a warrior or somebody who's drawn to war, it's in certain people. It's not for everybody. You definitely are one of us. Um, I know your background from like the colorblind days, etc. So like, I don't know if anybody else knows that, but you have
I try never to talk about it.
you've got my respect because I grew up on 7 seconds and colorblind. That's kind of how that whole name came together, was the colorblind crew, and those were people that would stand up for any race, stood against racism, etc. And that's solid. There was not a lot of people like that when we were growing up. So anyway, that warrior mentality, those guys that go to war and they get blood on their hands, it creates a different dynamic within your soul. We're not designed to kill people, not designed to murder people, I should say. If somebody was like attacking, let's say like it over at Inkwell, if someone was attacking Xena, I'm gonna for them. If they continue, I'm gonna increase the amount of force that I use. If they pull out a knife and try to kill me, it could go a lot of different directions. And I'm not going to play the game of what ifs. We'll play this game. If I end up with their blood on my hands, my soul takes a wound. It can't be repaired by human hands. And I speak this many different angles, from experience, from what I've watched my friends and brothers go through, and sometimes my enemies that become brothers, who always crave that war because there's a war within us. And can't just go out and get that off of anything. That's why so many people are like addicted to like Call of Duty or some game like that. It pacifies that conflict that's within them tangibly. So as guys that have experienced true war, they've now damaged their souls. They're in this state of constant conflict. Well, they're either going to do drugs, heavy alcohol to suppress it, to become belligerently violent, get themselves thrown into prison or killed. And they'll do that on purpose. They know they're going to die, and there's a piece of them that wants to die, has to be satisfied. Then there's people who, as God creates to heal others, I hope to fulfill that role, but I would recognize these people. And I'm like, dude, you got some ghosts following you. That's the expression I use. They go, mean. I'm like, you need to talk. Let's talk. And more often than not, they'll reach out, sometimes 3 months, sometimes 6 months. And I say, you've seen too much. How do you know this? I'm like, doesn't matter. I see it. Let's talk. It's through jujitsu that I get more of those guys that have that dilemma within them. And a lot of them are law enforcement, military, some are semi active military, and all have the same stigma. They all need healing. On my end, want to heal people. I needed healing and nobody showed up except for a couple people. Those people were very special to me. They stand out in my mind. And I kind of made a vow to God. I'm like, I want to be like those guys. Those guys had something inside them that was light and kept me alive. I was able to go on for one more day because of what that one dude said. And he ensured me that I was going to be all right. And he wasn't some weaky little wimpy dude. And no offense to like people that are scrawny. Um, he wasn't some he wasn't like religious, but he had this light shining inside of him. And through his eyes, I knew that God was talking to me saying, you're going to be okay. So I hoped and I hope to be that to anybody who needs it, because I needed it and he showed up.
I'm sure you have, and I'm sure you're going to continue to do that. You've done it for me a few times. If for some reason you know when to reach out to me when I'm low and I'm quiet. Yeah, I know. it's a beautiful thing, right? To be able to help the another man, because the past in June I made a bunch of videos, some vulnerable videos too. Um, I think men are just really stuck in this like I got to keep it to myself because you know, give a better word, my friends are gonna think I'm a pussy. Like, I'm a chump. I'm this. I'm weak. Look, we're human. First off, that's number one. Like we are all human, male, female, everything in between. We're all human. Thinking you're alone in a situation where you are, well, I'll be embarrassed. Well, I think being embarrassed is like it's such a weird foreign thing for me because I've always just owned up to whatever right or wrong I've done. And to be embarrassed about a feeling that you're having that's taking you down, I think is the devil's work. So you need to let it out. You need to talk to other people because when other people are feeling this, they're also doing the same thing. Like they're afraid to talk about what's going on inside them out of fear of weakness. And I don't think you're weak at all. I think there's some evil or some negative thing in your life that is just really interrupting your life most of all, and to be shy of talking about these things to another person is not helpful at all. I feel like people think that they're weak for like mentioning this stuff, and the past month that I had, or in June when I made all those series of videos, it was weird who was saying they needed like thank you so much, it helped me out. I got through some really rough times, and like that's why I decided to start doing the podcast again. And you were one of the people I thought of in that situation because we've had this relationship over the years. But what really, I don't want to hurt anybody when I say this, but I felt weird that I offered people to reach out to me, and the people like really helped me. Like, yeah, my immediate reaction was like, "Why didn't you call me?" Like that's in my head, but I didn't say that. And we have to break the stigma of just men being able to talk about shit that's going on in our lives. It's it's only hurting us. I think we only get one life here, right? Hopefully God doesn't say, all right, go back, do it again, you know. Like that's the goal, not to come back. We're just going right to heaven, and we're going to be done with this world because it's tough. But that's why we're here. So in my mind, I feel that's why we're here. But I think we need to break that stigma because living a long life with self-hatred or insecurities or just just dwelling in your own hell every day that's not existing, that's not living, that's not loving. I think we're here to love and experience love and to yeah, we're going to go through some rough times. I think that's part of it too. There's a learning lesson in everything. I think it's a beautiful thing when people can just be vocal about it. I really want to figure out a way to make a community, and I think it's wonderful what you're doing because what you're doing is masculine, right? But they're also being taught by somebody that can get real with them. And it's hard for even me at times to talk about real stuff because like I'm a tattooer, so I'm like the therapist guy. And then I go home and I cry for those people and I pray for those people. One of my prayers, every prayer actually, every time I pray, I always pray for the people that have touched my heart and I've touched theirs. You know, you know what I mean? Like, and it's like that's what we do. We touch people's hearts and we don't realize it. What an impact we are to these people. And you teach a lot of young people as well.
And the up here in Murphy have I started a homeschool program for Jiu-Jitsu homeschoolers, and it set off right away. And I kind of led to do it, and I was a bit inspired. Somebody down our way in Miami, Team Alpha Miami Grappling, close over there, he homeschooled his kids, Carlos and Gabby. Now their kids are top of the food chain in the competition world. They have made their mark. Carlos was a student of mine for a small season up into his brown belt, which is the belt prior to receiving your black belt. This guy would pray with his team, especially the kids. They would acknowledge God. They would acknowledge Jesus. And went from this warehouse team to the absolute top of the food chain, period. And I didn't
Down here.
yeah, Team Alpha Miami Grapple.
Okay.
Yeah, Gabby and Carlos down in Miami and all their children. I taught the oldest son, Corbin. He used to train with my son Daniel, but they it was just so beautiful. So I was like, you know what? When I have my own jujitsu center, I'm going to do a homeschool group. Maybe we'll do it twice a week or something. But ended up being 3 times a week, and it took off here. So God has definitely appointed it and anointed it. We, just like you were mentioning before, praying over everybody. We pray after the homeschool group, and we pray after the adult class in the evening. We just huddle up. There's no, like, you don't have to feel like you're not a part of it. I had one person kind of walk off. I'm like, what are you doing? You're part of our team. Get over here. And we huddle up like a football huddle, and one person will lead the prayer. And I've seen personal changes, not just in them, but I get affected. We have a family that just joined out of the Robbinsville area. And the middle daughter, I'm going to call her Izzy. I go, would anybody like to volunteer to pray? And she raised her hand. And I'm like, all right. I Whenever the kids want to pray, let them. They have a sharpened arrow like no other when they pray, because I'll actually get really good at praying, so I know what to say. These kids are praying from their hearts, not from here and here. And this little girl starts praying for all the wounded, the hurt, for her father whose knee just got injured that night. By the end of it, I'm in tears. Like, I'm not crying, but like my eyes are welled up. I look over at her dad, and his eyes are just glowing red, welled up. And he's like, every time she prays, this does it to me. I'm like, well, it does it to me now too. So it's kind of like all of us affecting each other. And, kind of drawing on what you were saying, like men need men. Our Gen X rebellion that we were all a part of taught us to, like, hide our feelings or to be overly tough. There's balance to that. Um, I mean, I fight occupationally, and it's fun. And my front teeth are all fake, and my ears are all cauliflowered, and I wouldn't change a thing. So I'm tough physically. The relationships, the meaningful relationships where I can walk up and like give you a hug, and I don't feel very, what would the word be, like, weak for doing that. I genuinely love you. I can fight, and I know you can fight. Something very manly about that. It's like, the New Zealanders, the haka, like all those,
Yeah, yeah.
dude, there's something so powerful when men embrace their power and their emotion combined. And we got screwed because we weren't taught to show emotion.
Yeah, I always talk about that, and what's crazy is our fathers were taught to suppress it even more, like to not have any feelings, And imagine their fathers, like, and this is not that many generations ago, those were hardened men that were just, they really felt that they're here for one purpose, and I think we're here for multiple purposes, to have kids, to raise kids, to create good community, stuff like that. And I've always felt that way, even before I came to the church and all that, So whenever I come to the church, I'm part of a men's group, and I hate saying that because I've missed so many weeks, but I'm definitely going tomorrow. Tomorrow is the iron versus iron sharpens iron at Fort Lauderdale, and it's amazing because I come in there completely different than everybody else, of course, I'm the punk rock hardcore 50-year-old dude that's a tattooer. And a lot of the guys that are in there are pretty straight laced, I'm the first one to I'm the first one to speak up about stuff, because even in that room of men that feel safe with each other, we've gone to several classes together. Some are still afraid to speak up, so I'll speak up. I don't mind. Get the ball rolling. Let's talk. That's what we're here. We're here to bond. We're here to talk. We're talking about real things. Get out some of our frustrations. Like, talk about God. Talk about, like, I mean, we did a study on the Titus 10, which is not Titus being tight, but Titus himself
Titus.
in his letters, And man, I literally broke down crying. I just lost my person, my fiance, and I'm in this class, and the first thing it's talking about is just being a good man, being a godly man. And some people are so turned off by God, and it bothers me because I know they're turned off because of man, not because of God. Because another human has said something or swayed them away from it, or just it's hard for them to believe because of how it was brought to them. I talked about my buddy I just had a podcast with. He's atheist, and by the end of it, he said something. Well, the devil's gotten in him. I said, well, if you believe in the devil, you believe in God. He's like, ah, you got me, and I'm like, yeah, But that class, it's just amazed me that men are still afraid to talk in there. But now I also serve at my church. I don't know if I've told you that. I agree. It's great when I see those other men walking in, and it's a different, like I say good morning to everybody, but when I see them, it's kind of like, yeah, I see you, you see me, situation. And I just want to be able to bring that to everybody, not God, not just God, but just bringing communities together. When I first started going to church, I was struggling, literally since I lost Asher, I've been a different person. And I went through a year of depression. You couldn't get me off the couch. Blew up to 290 pounds. Like, I was just a mess. Like, I watch old podcasts or old videos of myself, and I'm like, my face is like, the size of my leg. Like, I'm just so bloated. And that was depression. That was me not having an Asher anymore. Asher was my go-to, and then talking to a therapist, he was like, you need to start a men's group. You need to start a men's group. I'm like, what the hell? What in the world am I going to talk about? How am I to lead another man when I'm in this scenario? And he kept saying, no, when you get through this, I think you need to start doing that. I think you need to start doing a men's group. So eventually that's the hopes that I can do that for a local community. But I also think what you do, I always wanted to get into jiu-jitsu on a regular as a kid, but I then also knew the anger that I had inside me, that how dangerous I could be to people. So I kind of actually held myself back because I didn't want to, I learned stuff from guys that I used to hang out with because we're always rolling around having fucking fun. But then I wanted to get into wrist locking and stuff like that. And my buddy that teaches that is like, if I break your hand by accident, you're not going to be able to work, you know? So, but I have always loved the camaraderie in you guys and what you guys do. And I think more men that are looking for that companionship or that brotherhood, I think it's a very great outlet for them.
Him comes to mind. Song. Things that.
I don't remember, man. I can sing many songs and I have no clue
Yeah.
what the bands are.
It's so beautiful when men come together and lift each other up. I have this cool thing within our jujitsu group and our jujitsu centers with the women, and have this power with their words that they have the power to bring somebody to life. My daughter, he does the most awesome job of building people up instantly. She'll walk up to a random person and say, I love your eyes. You are so beautiful. And this person will just start glowing. And it makes me so proud of my daughter, number one, how women can use that also to tear other women down. Yeah. Well, being said, within our group, because we're all positive vibes, etc., I make sure that I kind of like seed the mentality that, listen, when somebody's not doing well, straighten their crown. The women got into this habit, especially over at our last jujitsu place down in West Pines, the Ohana team and the West Pines team over there your way. Women treat each other so well, and they will not let each other fail. And if somebody's like falling behind, the women are like, no, no, step it up. We got this. And it's like so awesome. So for the guys, kind of taking that same mentality and been like, I will not let you fail. We were going to make it so that you do not get stuck in that technique or this or that. I'm going to translate this over to the spiritual or the psychological aspect too. It's like, man, you know, and I know how deep depression can go.
Yes.
If I did not have Jesus, would not be here. I'll just leave it like that. Everybody can read between the lines. I wouldn't want to be here. He lifted me up out of that pit. So knowing the depths, that pre-hell state, I don't want anybody to stay there. So everything that's within me, and I think this is why you're on your journey as well. It's awesome, by the way. Pick the right person in you, pick them up. It'd be like, it doesn't matter if you're okay, you're overweight, with us. Underweight, come with us. Oh, you're not happy? Come with us. Oh, you're super happy? Come with us still. A place at our table for you. Like, let's build each other up. For happiness, or whatever, element that you're bringing to the table feeds somebody else. And here we are. And that's what our hopes are, even in this podcast. Is somebody will
Yes.
say, I get it. That's what I need.
Amen. Amen to that. Yeah, the depression part of it, right? So, I used to be on medication when I was younger. I didn't ever want to go back on it because it just didn't I wasn't me. And when I started going to church, my couldn't forgive myself. That was the problem. And I think that's what kept me in my depressive state was that I couldn't forgive myself of all the bad things I had done prior to the relationship I was in as a kid, the harm that I put on people. I used to say, and I still do believe the people that would scrap with me, get into fights with me, had no clue what they were coming up against. They didn't know that they were literally messing with a lion and they thought they were messing with a chipmunk. You know, I did a lot of bad things and I used to cry about it all the time. And these are things that I couldn't forgive myself for. And I couldn't forgive myself of other actions or the drinking that I was doing, trying to hide the PTSD, which I don't know if you know or saw that I was diagnosed with complex PTSD. So that comes from childhood and many, many layers of PTSD is what it is. Then when I went to church and I kept hearing how God forgives, God forgives, God forgives. And I was like, I might cry right now.
I was like, oh, here it comes.
That if the person that created us can forgive me of everything I've ever done, then I should be able to forgive myself.
Hard.
And I would go into church, and every week they ask, raise your hand if you're feeling this, raise your hand if you're feeling that. And this one time, the pastor said, just raise your hand if you need forgiveness. And I just prayed. I was like, please, just let me forgive myself. And that's when that thought came up, like, if I can forgive you, then you can forgive yourself. And what's crazy is I was doing, I think it's called EMDR. My therapist, if he watches this, he's probably going to be like, either you said it right or you said it wrong. But it's almost like meditation. In the middle of the meditation, um, I got deeper and deeper and deeper. And I heard a voice that wasn't mine. We all have our internal voice. It wasn't my father's. It was no person's voice. And I can hear people's voices and be like, hey, Vince is here, across an entire room of people. And I heard this voice. And when I came up out of because he would pull you up and put you back in, pull you up, pull you back in to teach yourself how to get into meditative state faster. And I was like, whoa, that was weird. And he's like, what's that? And I said, I just heard the most beautiful and stern and authoritative voice I've ever heard in my life, and it wasn't my father's because that's what I identify with authority with. And I heard a voice in my head, and I've never heard this voice before, and it shook me. And he said, "Well, what did it say?" And I said, "I'm proud of you." And my therapist said, "Well, in our world, that's what we call the voice of God. You just heard the voice of God." And anyone else I've ever talked to that's heard his voice, we describe it the same way, and it's the hardest thing to describe at the same time. And man, like that changed me. That was when I was like, all right. And I only had gone to church a couple of times, but I'd already given myself to Jesus. I hadn't been baptized yet or anything like that. But like that literally changed me. And I think that's the hardest part of PTSD and depression is learning to forgive yourself. And I think personally, these guys that come back from war, or these guys that have to do things that they don't want to do, like use the word murder, uh, I think it's hard for them to forgive themselves when they come back. You know, and it's funny. I get a little angry now, which I used to use the same thing to people like, well, if God works for you, that's all that matters, as long as something's working for you. And now that I'm growing a closer relationship to God. I mean, people say like, oh, all you have to do is live for God. I mean, if that's the goal to meet Him, to wind up in heaven, what else is there for to live for? You know what I mean? It's I never thought I'd be this person. You know my background. You know who I was. And I've literally had people come from other churches, and I'll throw my friend Jen under the bus. My friend Jen, she came to my church because she wasn't happy with her church. She had been part of this church forever. And she said, I truly believe in God even more now because I've known you since you were a teenager. And if you can come to God and come into his house and serve, there has to be a God and a righteous God at that. And I had to come and see what this church was about, because if they got you to come in here and be a part of it, I had to see what was going on. And now she's a member of our church.
Oh, that's how it
Yeah,
looks,
man.
brother. Like,
Yeah.
not everybody's going to know you that like within every aspect of your audience, but you're an extremely manly dude. You remember me back when I had hair and my teeth were
Yeah.
clean shaven. Now it's the opposite. I've seen you brawl on multiple occasions, and I'm like, touching back on what you were mentioning, people who would start fights with you, they didn't realize they weren't just fighting you, they were fighting every demon that was sitting in the back of your mind, triggering your fist to move forward. And that's someone you can't beat. That's a scary person to fight. And I remember that version of Adam. And I can see it in your eyes that that Adam is dead. And there's a new Adam there. And that's a lot of compilations, not just my prayer, because like my heart hurt for you, but it wasn't me. It was God within me that was hurting over you. So I knew how to pray. I was like, God, please deliver this guy. I know he's in a lot of pain. And that this is going back to 441 at that vitamin shop. Probably we're towards like Rock Island Road or something. I can't remember.
Yeah.
So that's how far back the prayers go, to see the outcome of who you are, a louder testimony to the people who are in your circle, anything that I could say with words, because they've seen your life change. And that is the proof.
Yeah. I will say this, the guy's still in there somewhere, deep down in there. I have that. I always said to my therapist years ago that she was like, I need you to let go of the young Adam, the 18-year-old Adam. And I'm like, there's going to come a time where that 18-year-old Adam needs to step up, you know? And some people still see that guy every now and then, but it's not who I thrive to be. It's not somebody that I want to be, but I am grateful that I had that, I have that warrior mentality, because people can and know that they're safe around me. And that was always the biggest thing. You know, most of the fights that I got into as a kid wasn't because I picked them. It wasn't because someone, I mean, you could poke at me, you could spit on me, you could throw things at me, but as soon as you mess with my friends, then you got the beast, you know, and it's still that way to this day, you know. And I don't think when a threat comes from me, which is very rare, it should be taken to the heart, because I will never let anyone hurt someone around me ever. You know, and I'm not saying I would kill anybody or hurt anybody to that aspect, but I will stop them in their tracks. You know, there's still that beast inside me, but it's not of, like you said, a place of pain. It's a place of, I know what I can do and how to protect people. And I think my new way to protect people is to listen and try to do stuff like this, what we're having this conversation now. You know what I mean? I really want to help people, and I'll say this probably on every podcast ever from this moment on, is we have a purpose, and I think my purpose has always been to help people.
As you were, or everything in nature, like a tree doesn't just spring up growing apples. It takes a long time to get to that place. It takes a lot of cultivation and care. And in the case of like the warrior mentality, that's something to share with you. This is very special to me, and I think this is going to help you well. It, all of that grinding against your soul and all the, when you create a great sword, it gets heated, it gets beaten, it gets heated and beaten some more, then folded and then beaten and then heated. And that's what our childhood really does feel like. I know yours is like mine, very similar, different places, same process. And one of the revelations that I really truly believe came to me um, as a kind of like an object lesson from God is that good swords are kept in sheaths. Swords are, and that came from a Moto Musashi movie. It was so perfect. The lady said it to him. She's like, "You're like this wild blade swinging around, but good swords are kept in sheaths." That's stuck inside my soul. It might be a tattoo you give me one day. It makes so much sense.
Love that.
What describes who we've become. I don't want to fight. I don't want to injure anybody. Occupationally, I get to roll almost every single day with friends who I love and that I want to protect, and I want to help them to become the same mindset. We keep our swords in sheaths. We don't injure each other. Hopefully that sticks in your mind too. Good swords are kept in sheaths. My brother, you are a good
For
sword.
sure. So I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Now that you said that, do you think what was the age that you were your most rebellious?
Started right around public school, which I went to Catholic school till grade 7. Um, Public school, you get exposed to like all the extra temptations and then a lot more promiscuity. Sex enters the picture, so does aggression. Then that turns into violence, and not in that order, but like when two guys are going after the same girl,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
they're not going to be friends most of the time. That gets into aggression, and then one postures and other postures, and it keeps escalating. And before you know it, somebody's missing a tooth, and the girl goes out with somebody else completely different than both of you. Yeah, around that age,
Yeah.
around 18,
Around that age, do you think that gentleman at that age would ever hear these words coming out of his mouth?
even know him.
Yeah. Crazy, right?
'Cause
I think the biggest struggle with young people right now is, I mean, we all grow up with this, right? We don't think we're going to live to 30. 30 seems so old. 40 is never going to happen, you
it's
know?
19.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. I think if if 50-year-old Adam would have ran into 20-year-old Adam or 21-year-old Adam or 22-year-old Adam and said, "Hey man, this is what life is really about. Calm down. Enjoy what you have right now." I think if these younger people can hear that some way, somehow, they'll calm down a little bit and stop being so angry and so fast to judge and so fast to attack each other, because it's pretty bad. It's pretty. I mean, I know we were bad, but it's just so heightened with these social media and stuff like that, you know? And I feel like they think that that's how people are. I don't know how your household was, but my parents argued. My father would beat my mom. And I thought that's how you show love, you know? And not that I beat women or ever bit. I knew that was wrong. But I think what people are seeing on these crappy TV shows out in social media, the violence is take the stand and do something violent, or, you know, just be an agitator or something. I think they're going to be very surprised in about 20 years how they look back and like, man, I shouldn't have done those things. You know, I see those things in myself all the time. I just wish there was a way we could crack that so that way they have a better future in their lives, because I know personally I wasted a lot of energy on dumb stuff, and it was a lot of aggro. It was a lot of ego driven stuff as well. You know, it's just, I mean, man, I wish someone could have said to me, "Hey, Adam, one day you're going to do X, Y, and Z. You have to trust me." And I could have trusted that person, because I can't believe who I am right now. You know, I'm sure you went through that too. I'm sure 22-year-old Vince. Oh yeah, you're going to have a jiu-jitsu center in the middle of the country where you're not even from, and you're going to be really happy.
Would never have imagined it, but I believe it wholeheartedly. That is one of the things that we are doing, you and I, and others that are like us. If I saw you and you told me, "Hey, Vince, you need to calm down," and you took me under your wing, if I saw you as a young man, all tatted up, you know, big juiced up Adam, and I would have been like, okay, I would have listened to you. Had, and God forgive me, but I had like dweeby, out of shape preachers trying to tell me about life, and I just couldn't connect. And I don't mean to say that they're all dweeby, but I couldn't connect to them. I needed somebody who was scary looking and tough, but still had a gentle voice. I needed somebody like Jesus.
Mm.
Is somebody like Jesus, and I couldn't find him in anybody. He found me. kept me
Yeah.
from killing myself
Yeah.
to my spirit and said, don't worry about killing yourself. You're still going to die. Logic within me that you don't have to do it now. Got that covered. You're going to die because, but from before that happens, let's take a walk and see what happens between now, then. And that gave me the hope to live another day. I needed Jesus. God, he showed up.
Amen. That's beautiful, man. So we're almost hitting an hour now. Is there anything you want to leave off on? Anything you want to talk about? You could talk about your school. You could talk about your life. You could talk about whatever you want to talk about.
Well, I would like to summarize like this. My jiu-jitsu center is doing fine. God has sustained it. I know your tattoo shop is doing probably great. You're blessed. But I would like to encourage anybody who listens, has ears to hear, as the saying goes, to be that light wherever you're called. Because you couldn't be reached but by a certain kind of person. You couldn't be reached or even hear except by a certain kind of person. And whoever you are, you're out there thinking like, how can I affect my world? I'm nobody. That's not true. You were made by the God of gods, the King of kings, the Lord of lords. And right where as you plant it is where you can bloom. And if you're not meant to bloom there, he'll put you somewhere else. But don't ever take yourself for granted and what he intends to do with you. Because as me and Adam were saying, I can't believe I'm here. I can't believe that I'm actually able to make a difference in anybody's life. It's very humbling. Who are not that person yet, you can be. Probably will be.
Amen. 100%. I love that, man. I want to thank you again, Vince, for your time. Hopefully we can do this again. I think this was wonderful. And